Welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed that episode of Hulu's Pam and Tommy. Let's get started. Let's introduce the creators and co-showrunners, executive producers, and writers, Robert Siegel and Dee Dee DeVicentes, nominated in Outstanding Limited or Anthology Series. Nominated for Supporting Actor in a Limited Anthology Series or Movie as Rand Gauthier, Seth Rogen, who's also an executive producer on the series. Nominated for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Limited Anthology Series or Movie as Tommy Lee, Sebastian Stan. And nominated for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Limited or Anthology Series or Movie as Pamela Anderson, Lily James. And Lily, I'm starting with you. We were talking about this. You totally Marlon Brando'd, you totally Kate Blanchetted this role. How did you know that Pam Anderson was in you? And you know, when I asked these guys earlier, these creators, like, hey, how'd you know it was in her? They're like, yeah. I'm like, come on. You had to know. You had to know she could go the distance. How did you? Let's start with you. How did you know it was in? How did you know Pam was in you?
I didn't. I really didn't. But I was so intrigued by this insane possibility and this. No, I would love to know, guys, actually entirely how and on earth you trust me with this. It was a very long walking process, which started like months before with just like watching every single interview of her ever, and then the amazing makeup work and all this stuff. But it took its time. Although I have to say, the first time I started like speaking along, I was very intrigued by the way she spoke and her humor deflecting and the way she held herself. And I suddenly found myself like, ooh, I can see that. I recognize that. I understand that. Or you. And so, yeah, it was pretty wild.
And guys, Robert and DV, how did you know she could play the role? And what fascinates me is, you know, when notable stars land these roles, it's not like they're reading for them.
No, definitely not. It's a bit of a leap of faith. We watched her reel. We watched some clips of. Sorry, that was a joke.
We knew that she was. You know, extraordinary, and we both sort of dove in and looked at what she'd done, and we saw such a sort of intelligence, and that was really the key. It was like, well, if somebody gets into characters in this way, they can it's going to be thrilling to watch and see how they do this. But it is, you know, there is a bit of a high wire act. I mean, nothing's a slam dunk, and so to watch what she did with it was so completely extraordinary.
And I think people really underestimate or misunderstand Pam, and I liked that there was the potential for that same kind of underestimation or misunderstanding with Lily, where people kind of came into it with this assumption that she's, you know, Cinderella, Mamma Mia, Miss Goody Two Shoes girl, and I think Pam, in a different way, but also people probably, you know, come to her with certain expectations or assumptions about her, and then she's just constantly proving them wrong and subverting it. And I thought that was a really that was a really good fit in that respect.
Sebastian, not to ignore you and the method that you took to get into Tommy Lee. I mean, you walked into this role. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it was just repetition, like every day, you know, kind of just I was lucky because I had this 1 month by myself before we really started, where I would just kind of have this routine. You know, I'd get up in the morning and then fast for a while, and then go like try to get like 20,000 steps in LA and run, like walk, and then I would listen to you know, interviews that I'd put together, like, and then the drum teacher would come by in the afternoon, and then I'd get a text, I think once a week, from Rob being like, did you get the twirling yet? And and I was like, oh my God, I got to get the stick twirl. Like, if that stick twirl is, if anything's going to happen, it's got to have the stick twirl. But it was a pretty anxious process. I mean, I think, Lily was probably still in England, or she was in LA yet for some of it. So I was texting with her and kind of being like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And then, it wasn't until we really met at Craig Gillespie's house with the guys, and then we really sort of started reading the lines, and then kind of things started to calm down a little bit in a good way.
So for everyone on the panel, have you heard from Pam&Tommy, like any response to this show? Because it's not a scathing portrayal of them. It takes a very human, sympathetic look about the media torture they've gone through, and no one's heard from them. Any kind of response?
Sebastian has, right?
Tommy, yeah. Well,
Tommy.
yeah. I met him obviously towards the end of the show when I reached out to a friend. We were all trying to kind of make contact, and everybody tried in various different ways. And I had worked with somebody who had worked with him, and, I just had initiated contact, and it was really strange. Like when we met sort of like towards the end of our shoot, because I always say that it feels most like what it would be like to meet like an older version of yourself in a weird way. Because it's like, you spend all this time sort of researching everything and kind of like trying to download everything, and then you show up really excited, kind of almost weirdly expecting that you're going to meet this thing that you've researched, and they're already far down life. They're like 40 years ahead and in a whole different world, so there's something strangely nostalgic about that.
Seth, tell me about when Point Grey came aboard to the project. Were Robert and Devi already there? Had you read Amanda Chicago Lewis's article from Rolling Stone? And then
I think Point Grey maybe predates everyone on this current Zoom on the project. Yeah, we had originally read the article and optioned the Rolling Stone article. We were really fascinated by it. We proceeded to, Rob was someone we were huge fans of, and thought he came in and had like an amazing pitch and like a fantastic take. And I actually marvel, it's something I talk about, is like I go on so many pitches, and so few shows wind up the same as how they are pitched. And our pitch, Rob literally walked through every episode of the show in great detail, and the show became exactly what he pitched, which is like, I think it shows how, kind of pure the vision was from the very beginning, and how, it was, there wasn't a lot of like weird kind of versions of this that we kind of toyed with. There was always like a kind of one idea we were all very much on board with, which I think was very helpful, especially with something like this that has kind of a narrow, a small bullseye, I guess you would say. So yeah, we were really drawn to the project, and honestly, because I personally had the experience that I hope viewers would have, in that I had like really thought I understood this story. The tape came out when I was, around 13 years old. And then as I learned more about it, I realized that that me and culture had kind of been fed and were complicit in perpetuating like a completely false narrative, basically. And I found that very, I always like when I realize I'm wrong about something, honestly. I think it's fascinating. And I thought if we could provide some glimmer of that to the audience, then that would be like a very effective Hulu streaming miniseries.
And what brought you to play Rand? What was it about him? Not honestly, his current profession.
Yeah, exactly. He does grow weed now. Truthfully, like, the tone of that stuff to me was appealing as a performer. I find the idea more than honestly, like, I thought it was a character I could perform, but I really like the genre of kind of like idiotic criminal doing something that they can't, that they are bad at, and that they keep getting, that keeps getting worse. Like, to me, that's just kind of like one of my favorite like types of drama and comedy or friction, whatever you would call it. But it's something I always loved, and to me, to kind of play this guy that is wrapped up in what he kind of views as this like master criminal, scheme, but he's just like truly not a very intelligent person, nor a very thoughtful person, nor someone who considers remotely how his actions are affecting others. There was a lot of things I found very appealing about it. Yeah.
So the show highlights the disparity in the treatment of Pam and Tommy in the wake of the tape's release. Can all of you tell me more about what you hoped audiences would take away from this depiction of implicit misogyny and sexism?
I mean, I yeah, go ahead, Lil.
You go first.
You go.
Well, no, I mean, I guess I was going to say what felt like pressing and why I really wanted to do this and explore that topic and provoke conversation about it was because it just feels like it's just still happening, and you want to be more shocked, but it's just ongoing and getting worse and worse with this like open cruelty on social media and this ease and like having to not take responsibility for your words. And so it just felt something that I was just desperate to kind of dig in on and reveal something of myself in order to be as honest as possible.
Yeah, we looked at it as kind of like the big.
Oh,
Oh no, sorry. I was going to say it's sort of like the big bang of what the universe is now. In that, Rand is sort of the original troll. He sets forth this thing. He has no accountability about it. Is unaware of the damage it causes. Doesn't really care. Doesn't think he's a bad person. He's not an evil guy at all. And that's what so many people are now. You can just say whatever you want online. You just shit post and say something terrible, and it goes out there and hurts somebody, and you don't have to feel bad about it or feel any accountability. And that's new. That's a really new thing. And it kind of started here.
They feel like they're the victims mostly in these situations, which is truly messed up. Yeah.
Sebastian?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that pretty much what I think DV was just said, which is that it feels very timely. I think people are encouraged more than ever now to be invasive. I mean, that's what social media really has become. In a lot of ways. You walk down the street in New York, every iPhone is a camera now. And we're in a clickbait world more than ever. It's just, and you see it even with sort of like news channels and, newsworthy kind of, it's not just bloggers. It's everyone's trying to stay alive, so to speak, by giving you the interesting headline for you to click on, and then you've got your phone giving you this algorithm and it's suggesting you these things. And there's this, you're like walking around, like kind of trying to figure out what's wrong with the world. And it's just, I think the idea and the intention was always to inspire conversation and awareness in that way. And it's interesting to see some of the conversation around the show, because to some extent it feels as though we've fallen back into the same example as we did years back with this story.
It wasn't just the story itself that was so powerful to all of us as a sort of allegory about what's going on now, but it also has to do with this central character of Pamela Anderson and how in real life she survived this and retained her dignity through all of it, through the most, the worst attacks, and still does to this day. There's so much strength and power in her, and we all really admired her. I mean, she, in a sense, is our number one audience,
Yeah, it's actually.
Robin, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say with the episode we just watched, in episode 3, where she's talking about not being defined as one thing and giving Jane Fonda as a reference and not being boxed in, I can be all these different things. And she's had such an ability to do that despite this awful thing that happened to her and how she was treated. She has continually reinvented herself. And yeah, that speech that these guys wrote was so brilliant because it's just sort of just like hit the nail on the head of exactly the problem, and but she still manages to do it.
For the record, okay, I believe I was on set when I said that clip's going to be playing when you're nominated for an Emmy, and so I did say that. I know I said that.
I was like, shut up.
You know it. You know I did it.
Robin DV, can you talk about your writing process? What were some of the challenges the two of you faced as you balanced the story?
I think just doing right by these people. You know, these are real people who are still very much alive. You know, you feel like you have their lives in your hand, and you know, you want to create really compelling drama while also not, you know, dishonoring or doing any kind of disservice to them. That was definitely, I would say, one of the challenges. I mean, there are many challenges, especially when, you know, when you're dealing with real life people. And then just kind of juggling, you know, there's just so many themes in the thing, you know, these invasion of privacy and celebrity and technology, and we've got all these different, you know, a lot of subplots, and just to keep, you know, kind of keep a through line going while also servicing all these other things. It's what was so appealing about the story, was there's just so many tentacles.
We always had those key things that were always sort of present, even just written up on a wall. They would always make sure that that those were touchstones that we were reaching out and involving in the writing of every episode.
Yeah, we had a pretty crazy dry erase board going.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pam and Tommy, nominated for 10 Emmys, including Outstanding Limited or Anthology Series. I want to thank our guests, Emmy nominees Lily James, Sebastian Stan, Seth Rogen, Robert Siegel, and D.V. DeVincentis. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.